Hi everyone. Just wanted to come on live just to tell you that I'm actually back in the UK. My mum hasn't been too well, and so I had to come back early from India. But the good news is that I'm looking after her, and she's improving a little bit, so that's good. Been cooking for her and looking after her and so forth. And I have a little bit of good news that I've had my first book back from the publisher. It's called Becoming the Oracle. And so I thought I would go live on Facebook and just read 10 pages at a time. And yes, so here we go. I'm just gonna start. Okay. An ancient breeze blew across the open bay, obliterated only by the rocky crags that rose above it. The sun kissed the bodies of the olive-skinned lovers, Alesius and Petra, as they clambered, laughed and kissed among the shallow rock pools below. The recently married couple were enjoying the fruits of their honeymoon. Petra giggled as Alesius chased her, pretending that she didn't want him to catch her. He caught up, panting and whisking her round to face him. She succumbed and allowed him to pick her up in his arms as he kissed her fervently. Both enjoying how their tongues entwined, they broke connection as he led her by the hand and headed for the sand dunes where he would claim his marital bounty. He took a moment and looked at his beautiful wife. "I love you, my sacred princess," he breathed in her ear. Her long tresses of dark hair fell alluringly around her breasts, her darkened nipples poking through her sheer white linen toga that she wore. He wanted her so badly. He had waited a long time for this. Her femininity glowed as if that of a goddess made flesh. He was in awe. Her sacred cave beckoned him in. Now she would be his forever. The only thing bothering the groom, niggling him in the back of his mind, was the nagging thought that he had had to promise to give up any daughters that they would have. They had had to promise this curse as a sacrifice to the gods in return for Petra's father's blessing of their marriage. Petra was the youngest only daughter of the king. She had 2 older brothers, but marrying beneath her royal status was frowned upon, and even though Alesius was from a noble lineage, the sacrifice still had to be made. The family had sought counsel with the oracle of Delphi, and it was she, the witch, who had cast them this rotten spell. Although in public he had accepted it graciously, anything to be with his beloved. No matter, he thought, we're sure to have sons, strong and handsome warrior men who would fight alongside him under her father's banner. But many an ebb and flow of the tide since those heady days passed, and Petra fell pregnant. Alesius hoped desperately for a boy. He prayed to the gods who took no mercy on him and his bargain, and when her time came, dealt him a daughter, Athena. The moment the baby was born, Petra wept like she had never wept before, knowing the poor child's destiny. Athena was a bright and beautiful baby who suckled fervently at her mother's breast. Petra dreaded the day when she would be forced to give her daughter up, as was promised and the custom in these instances. The child at 1 year old would be given over to the priestesses at the temple of Apollo to begin a training and life dedicated to Apollo and Athena, and ultimately becoming the oracle herself. A life of magic and alchemy, eventually culminating in sitting on the tripod throne, the ultimate queen of truth and wisdom. Inhaling the breath of the gods, the ethers which catapulted them into the higher realms of awareness, a timeless void where everything is known and few can venture. Soon enough that dreaded time came around. Petra cried as she kissed her baby goodbye, as ultimately she knew only 2 things would come of this. 1, she would eventually die, poisoned by the toxic cloud that she would be forced to inhale on a daily basis, or perhaps worse than death itself, she thought that her beloved child would lose her mind and would never bear her own children or have the love of a man as she had. Alesius consoled his wife and caressed her sobs with kisses. Surely a son would make her forget. Petra hated her father for this promise he had forced them to agree to, as her love for Alesius had only been allowed with conditions, as his lack of royal status did not match hers, which did not please the gods at all, and they must be appeased, and appeased they were. Petra bore 2 more daughters, Olifera and Xenia. Had she displeased the gods so much, she pondered? Why were her girls destined for such a life of selfless torture for her sins? The burden of this guilt grew heavy on her spirit. Alesius grew weary of his wife's melancholy. Their once true sworn love faltered and was crushed under the enormous sadness which drove deep, dark chasm between them. Petra was now older and sought out counsel from the wise women from the village, who prepared potions and amulets for her to make favour with the gods. She pleaded her case with them. The hags were greedy for exotic jewels. She gave them all she had. A son was worth all that and more, she thought, as she drank the bitter-tasting potion that they had brewed. She beguiled herself and draped her naked body in sheer white fine-spun linen for her husband's favour, hoping he would remember their honeymoon. She wore her golden bracelets and necklaces and scented herself with exotic oils from Egypt. Alesius was surprised that his wife had gone off their love-making for some time. He was refreshed to see her so exhilarated and so in favour of it. It spurned his fervour to conquer her anew. She seemed so different. What could have happened? She had a light-hearted ease about her, just like the old Petra he used to know before his daughters had come along. At a crucial moment in their union, she felt it, the light spark, an internal explosion where seed and sperm unite. She knew that exactly that moment that her wish had been fulfilled. 9 months from conceiving, a baby boy named Alexio was born, which means defender of man. At last, a true heir to the throne of Greece, if her brothers should die childless fighting their father's battles. Alexio was the apple of his father's eye, especially as his daughters had been so cruelly stolen from them. Alesius and Alexio were inseparable, father teaching son all the skills of war, archery, swordsmanship and tactics. He had started teaching the boy at a very young age, and now, as a young man, he had grown tall and lithe, quick of wit and intellect, a true strategist and very well educated in all forms of philosophy, mathematics and the sciences. Petra loved her son, but mourned the loss of her daughters daily. She realised that the divine feminine aspect was expressed through them, their spirituality, intuition and creativity, and her son for the divine masculine, expressing logic, strength and intellect. She worried about them all. The girls would never marry and would never reach old age either, and her son would have to fight in battles alongside his father. She worried about them all. Many moons later, inside the marble confines of the Temple of Apollo, Athena gazed longingly through the pillars at the distant horizon. The temple, surrounding gardens and living quarters, which were situated at the lowest strata of the temple complex, were all that she and her sisters had ever known as home, although the grounds were splendid indeed. Outside the Temple of Apollo stood a large bronze bowl, which was the seat of the eternal Delphic flame, a pure and holy flame given to them directly from the gods. If the flames in other cities got polluted or went out, emissaries were sent to take the Delphic flame to reignite it from the source. There had been stories of one such case, a runner named Eucytes, who died after carrying the flame from Delphi to Portea in a journey of 100 miles in just one day to reignite its flame. Apart from the beautiful temples dedicated to Athena and Apollo, the god of reason, light, music and prophecy, there were other, higher levels to Delphi. As the mountain rose upwards, you reached the middle layer. there was a grand semicircular amphitheatre dedicated to the god Dionysus, who was worshipped there between November and January. He was the god of fertility and wine. His amphitheatre was only used by the priestesses when things were quiet and nobody was about. On those occasions, they had free rein in their kingdom and used all the sacred spaces for their rituals and lessons. The amphitheatre was a perfect classroom, as the acoustics allowed that anywhere one sat in the semicircle, the person speaking at the centre would be clearly heard, even if they spoke in a whisper. Ariadne, who was the current oracle, taught them there regularly for their secret mystery school lessons and rituals. They also were responsible for the worship of god Dionysus. His festival was the girls' most favourite highlight of their year. All the oracle handmaidens would join with selected local village girls in a celebration of offerings, music and wine. This would involve them all getting very drunk and high on sacred mushrooms, which was a celebration, a sacred party, channeling fun, wine, music and song. After all, Dionysus needed to be appeased, and they had so much fun doing so. The general public were admitted to the temple complex on special occasions, such as the 9 times a year, once a month, from February to October. The oracle herself would do general readings. This was extended from the original once a year on February the 7th, which was Apollo's birthday. But due to her popularity and demand, these times were extended. Questioners who were only allowed to be men were not guaranteed an audience with the oracle. However, if a person or group made a significant offering, it would get them the privilege to go to the front of the line. Others seeking an audience who had not the means would be made to draw lots to see who would be the lucky winners. The losers were turned away and told to come back next month and to try again. Those lucky enough to have been granted an audience would first have to pass another test. It required them to sacrifice a goat to Apollo, but first it had to be determined if Apollo was happy to answer their question. This was determined by ice-cold water being thrown over the goat. If the goat shivered, it was said to be favourable for the questioner to proceed further. Some were turned away even at this late stage. The gatekeeper priestesses would take them first to the spring of Castilia to bathe and absolve themselves with a purification prayer to raise their own vibration before being allowed to enter into the temple of Apollo by the front ramp. They passed inscriptions written there, "Know thyself," among others attributed to the 7 sages of the ancient world. Delphi was not an easy pilgrimage. Navigation of steep mountains on one side, which could take a month from Athens, and the other way by sea, which could also be treacherous waters. Crowds would make this journey from all over Greece and the known world, not only to see the oracle, but for the Pythian Games, second only in prestige to the amazing Olympic Games, which were also held only once every 4 years, as was their custom. On the upper level, there was a stadium where the races were run, discus and javelin thrown, as well as athletics, but there were also competitions in music, art and dance. Outside of the stadium ran a huge oval chariot racing track, the hippodrome, that could race 4 chariots abreast at any one time. At these times, the girls were locked away from prying eyes, lest they would also see the naked men partaking in the games, which could lead to all sorts of problems. Athena now had reached adolescence and had primeval stirrings inside herself and wondered what the touch of a man would be like. The priestess, Angela, as her and her sisters used to call her, must never know. Impure thoughts were not allowed. She longed for another life, but knew her destiny was to sit upon the tripod throne, to become the famous oracle. As the eldest of the 3, she would be the first to go. The oracles always seemed to disappear after some time. One day they just would not return, and no one would say where they had gone or what had happened. No one would tell them. Maybe they'd won their freedom like the famous gladiators and were free to live a normal life. How would she have the wisdom to be the oracle if she didn't even know what was on the other side of that mountain, she mused. How could they keep her and her sisters prisoners here against their will for their whole lives? What strange, huge sin had they committed? The sign above the temple door, know thyself, was the key to understanding the mysteries of the universe, and the universe, as the high priestess had put it. As above, so below. The more she learnt, the more confused she became. All seemed like riddles upon riddles, and her logical mind could not get its pretty little head around it. Yes, she could meditate and reach states of wonder and awe, even whilst remaining in conscious awareness, but the elusive awakening, when would she know if that had happened? The oracle could not sit without being awakened. Ariadne, who was the current oracle, had told her once that there were two ways to become awakened. One was through suffering, and the other through insight. Insight sounded the better option, so she tried hard to absorb all the knowledge that she could. But why hadn't it yet happened? Visions, yes, occasionally premonitions and flashes, but full-on connection with the gods and goddesses, that hadn't happened yet. She wished with all her heart that it would strike her like a lightning bolt, although the longing for knowledge of the outside world had created some sort of invisible barrier and resistance for full connection to happen. Ariadne taught them in lessons. Dear sisters, there are 4 stages to awakening. Firstly, there is an emotional rock bottom. It is normal. You will feel total emptiness and question if this existence is all that there is. There will be complete confusion, pain, and frustration with life. Athena could totally relate to that. Secondly, you will start to become aware. You will have an awareness of your ego and its limiting beliefs. That as adults, we are just as small children trapped in adult bodies, repeating conditioned patterns that do not serve your highest good and no longer serve you in your quest, she continued. Then thirdly, you enter in the cocoon stage like a caterpillar. You withdraw into your inner world to avoid the outside noise, chaos and confusion. It's a time to be alone in reflection. This is the beginning of the birth of the true self. Then finally, dear ones, there is a rebirth of your soul. You become pure, expanded consciousness and live a life of choice beyond the egoic realm. You will then have the power to show others how to do the same, and the awakening can be ignited around you. Athena believed in Ariadne. The oracle herself had taken her under her wing as her protégée. She was the next in line to the oracle throne. That was not the only reason, as Ariadne genuinely liked her, and as time passed by, their love of each other grew. They spent many days together. They had become friends. Athena adored and doted on Ariadne's every word. She admired her so much, her divine feminine grace, her beauty, and above all, her fine-tuned, laser-focused intuition. She loved to listen to her stories. Ariadne loved to teach all the girls through storytelling and allegory. The myths and the legends of the gods and goddesses were her favourite. They would spend hours together with the other novices learning the ways from her and the wealth of mystical knowledge that she had amassed, soaking it all up with glee. When she taught, it was not a chore to learn, it was a beautiful gift to receive. So that's the first 10 pages, and I will see you tomorrow for a further 10. Sending you much, much love from the Isle of Wight and looking after my mummy here. So sending you lots of love and light to you wherever you are around the world. And hi, Narayan. Sorry I couldn't get your call earlier. I was with a friend. But anyway, sending you much love over to India. We miss you. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.